Stop waiting. Start becoming. Welcome to Becoming with Beck, the podcast for those ready to shift their mindset, lead themselves, and manifest intentionally. If you know you're meant for more, you're in the right place. Let's begin.
Hello and welcome back to Becoming with Beck. I'm your host, Beck Robinson, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now, I'm on a roll this week. This is my third podcast that I am recording in 3 days. I'm trying to play catch up. I'm working from home this week, so I'm bulk recording episodes so that I can get them out weekly again. Thank gosh. Now, today's topic is a bit different, and it's something that I have been connecting with for years and years and years, and I think a lot of people do, but there's a lot of confusion because there's some talks in the manifestation world about signs and synchronicities, and I want to talk about it. Have you ever thought of someone and then your phone lit up with their name? You've seen a number sequence so many times in a day that it stopped feeling like a coincidence. You had a song come on at exactly the right time, the one that said exactly what you needed to hear. Or you had a stranger say something in passing that answered the exact question you'd been sitting with all week. Most of us have had experiences like these, and most of us have had one of two reactions. We either brushed it off, told ourselves it was random, that we were pattern seeking, that it didn't mean anything, or we felt it, that quiet electric feeling in the chest that says that was not a coincidence. Today I want to talk about that feeling, and I want to give you a framework for understanding it, both through the lens of science and through the lens of spiritual philosophy, that I think will change the way you move through everyday life. Because I believe the universe is always communicating, always leaving breadcrumbs, always pointing the way. The question is not whether the signs are there. The question is whether you are tuned in enough to receive them. So let's explore that together. Let's start at the beginning. The word synchronicity was coined by the Swiss psychiatrist and psychologist Carl Jung in the early 20th century. Jung was one of the most brilliant and expansive minds in the history of psychology, a student of Sigmund Freud, who eventually broke away to develop his own far more spiritually inclusive framework for understanding the human psyche. Jung defines synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence, a moment where an external event and an internal state align in a way that feels significant, even though there is no obvious causal relationship between them. The key word here is meaningful. Jung wasn't just talking about coincidences, he was talking about the coincidences that carry a felt sense of significance, that stop you, that make you pay attention, that seem to be speaking directly to something you are already thinking, feeling, or needing. Synchronicity is not about the event itself, it is about the meaning that arises at the intersection of the event and your inner world. Jung spent decades studying these experiences, documenting them in his own life and in the lives of his patients, and became convinced that they were not random noise. He believed that they were evident of a deeper, ordering principle in the universe, what he called the collective unconscious, a shared field of meaning that connects all human experience. Now, Jung was writing in the early 1900s, long before quantum physics gave us the language and the mathematics to describe the interconnected, observer-influenced nature of reality. But what he was pointing at intuitively maps extraordinarily well onto what physics now tell us about the nature of the universe, which brings me to the science. The reticular activating system, why you notice what you notice. Your brain receives approximately 11 million bits of information per second from your environment. 11 million. And yet you are consciously aware of only about 40 to 50 of them. The filter responsible for that selection is called the reticular activating system, or RAS. It sits at the base of your brainstem, and its job is to decide from the overwhelming flood of incoming data what is worth your conscious attention. And it makes that decision based on one primary criterion: what is already important to you. This is why when you buy a new car, you suddenly see that car everywhere. The cars were always there, but now your RAS has been primed. It knows that car matters to you, and it flags every single one for your conscious attention. The same principle applies to signs and synchronicities. When you are deeply focused on something, a vision, a question, a desire, a fear, your RAS begins to surface everything in your environment that is relevant to it. Conversations, numbers, songs, books that fell open to the right page, articles that appear at exactly the right moment. Were these things always there? Yes. But now you can see them because your inner world has primed your outer perception. The signs were always present. What changes is your capacity to receive them, and that capacity is directly linked to your inner state. Now, let's go beyond the neuroscience, because while the RAS explains part of what's happening, I don't think it explains all of it. And I want to honor both science and the something more. Across virtually every spiritual tradition on earth, there is a version of the same teaching: the universe, God, source, the field, the divine, whatever you call it, is not a passive backdrop to your life. It is an active, responsive, communicating presence, and it speaks constantly through the very fabric of your everyday experience. Now, how does this relate in the law of assumption framework? Neville Goddard taught that the outer world is always a reflection of the inner world, that what you encounter in your physical reality is never random. It is the materialization of your dominant assumptions, beliefs, and emotional states. From this perspective, synchronicities are not just the universe sending you messages from outside yourself. They are your own consciousness expressed outward. They are the field responding to your frequency. They are evidence, real, tangible, external evidence that your inner work is creating movement. A synchronicity is the universe holding up a mirror. It is saying, I see what you are becoming. Keep going. So how does that relate to Eastern philosophy? Well, the concept of Dharma in Hindu philosophy speaks to the idea that there is a path, a right and aligned unfolding for each individual life. And that when you are on the right path, when you are moving in alignment with your higher self and deepest purpose, the way opens, the doors appear, the right people arrive at the right time, the breadcrumbs begin to show up. This isn't passive fate. It's the experience of alignment, of your inner and outer worlds moving in the same direction at the same frequency. So how does this relate in Indigenous and earth-based traditions? The natural world has long been understood as a living, communicating intelligence. Animals, weather, the movement of stars, all understood as languages, all carrying messages for those who know how to listen. What strikes me about all these traditions, as different as they are, is the shared underlying conviction: we are not alone in this. We are in relationship with something larger than ourselves. And that something is always, always communicating. I want to briefly mention my own experience here, because I've had moments where the signs were so specific, so precisely timed, so clearly responsive to something I had just been thinking or feeling, that the word coincidence simply didn't fit. And I've learned over time that those moments are not something to brush off or to rationalize away. They are something to receive, to sit with, to follow. You don't have to choose between the science and the spiritual. The RAS explains how you notice the signs, but it doesn't explain why they arrive at exactly the right moment. That is where something more beautiful comes in. I love the breadcrumb trail as a metaphor for this work because it captures something really important about how signs and synchronicities actually operate. They rarely give you a whole map at once. They don't hand you a 10-year plan with every step laid out. Instead, they show you the next breadcrumb, just the next one, and only when you follow it does the one after that become visible. This is, I think, by design, because the following is the becoming. The willingness to trust the trail, even when you can only see one step ahead, is the practice of faith, of self-trust, of surrender. And those are the very qualities that the version of you living your highest timeline is built on. The universe doesn't reveal the whole path at once. It only reveals the next step, and your willingness to take it is proof of your readiness for whatever comes next. So how do you read breadcrumbs? Here is a practical framework I want to share with you because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. They are so busy waiting for a grand, unmistakable sign that they miss the quiet, consistent trail that's always been there all along. Number 1, notice what repeats. Signs rarely shout, they whisper, and then they repeat. The same number sequence 3 days in a row, the same word appearing in 3 different conversations, the same idea surfacing through 3 separate sources you weren't even looking for. Repetition is the universe turning up the volume. When something keeps appearing in your field, is it worth pausing and asking, what is this pointing me toward? What question does this answer? What decision does this speak to? Number 2, pay attention to resonance, not just recognition. Not every sign is a number sequence or a white feather. Sometimes a sign is a sentence in a book that makes you catch your breath. A conversation that answers the exact question you were holding. A moment of unexpected clarity that arrives unprompted in the shower. The hallmark of a genuine sign is resonance, that felt sense in your body that says, this matters. This is for me. Pay attention here. Learn to trust that feeling. It is not random. It is your inner knowing, your intuition, recognizing something that your logical mind hasn't caught up to yet. Number 3, distinguish between signs and wishful thinking. I want to be honest here because I think it's important. Not everything is a sign, and one of the most important skills in this work is developing the discernment to know the difference between a genuine synchronicity and our own desire to see what we want to see. Here's a simple distinction that helps me. A genuine sign tends to arrive when you are in a state of openness, presence, and quiet trust. It tends to feel clarifying, like a confirmation of something you already know. It often arrives when you are not desperately looking for it. Wishful thinking, on the other hand, tends to show up when we are anxious, grasping, needing reassurance. It tends to feel effortful, like we are forcing meaning onto something. And it often requires us to stretch the interpretation quite a long way. If you have to work hard to make something a sign, it probably isn't one. Genuine signs have a quality of effortless recognition. You don't have to convince yourself, you just know. Number 4, follow the breadcrumb, even when it feels small. This is perhaps the most important piece. Signs are not passive. They are invitations, and the way you respond to them determines whether the trail continues to reveal itself. When the sign arrives, when the breadcrumb appears, the question is not just what does this mean? The question is what does this ask of me? Maybe it asks you to make a call you've been putting off, to say yes to an invitation that feels slightly outside of your comfort zone, to finally start the thing you've been circling for months, to trust the direction your intuition has been pointing, even without full certainty. The breadcrumb trail is a co-creation. The universe places the crumbs, you take the steps. And with every step you take, you signal to the field, I trust this, show me more. The trail reveals itself in proportion to your willingness to follow it. Every step taken in trust makes the breadcrumb easier to see. Now, I want to address something before we close because I think it's something a lot of people experience and we don't talk about enough. What do you do when the signs go quiet? When you've been following the trail and suddenly it seems to disappear, when the synchronicities dry up, when the clarity you had seems to evaporate and you're left in what feels like silence, first, this is normal. It is part of the path, not evident that you've lost it. Sometimes the silence is an invitation to go inward, to do the deeper work of identity and belief that needs to happen before the next chapter of the trail becomes visible. Sometimes it's a sign in itself to slow down, to rest, to consolidate what you've already received before moving forward. And sometimes, honestly, the signs are still there, but you moved into a state of anxiously seeking that makes them harder to perceive. When we are grasping for signs, we tend to miss them. They arrive most clearly in the spaces between the searching. The silence is not abandonment. It is often the pause before the next breadcrumb, and it always has something to teach you. Trust the quiet as much as you trust the signs. Both are part of the conversation. Here's what I want you to carry into your week from today's episode. The universe is not indifferent in your life. It is not a cold mechanical backdrop against which things randomly happen to you. It is a living, intelligent, responsive field, and it is in constant conversation with you through the very fabric of your everyday experience. The songs, the numbers, the strangers who say the exact right thing, the book that falls open, the ideas that arrive at 3 a.m., the person who appears at precisely the right moment. Those are not accidents. They are breadcrumbs. They are invitations. They are the trail. And your only job, is to stay open enough to notice them, grounded enough to discern them, brave enough to follow them, and trusting enough to keep walking even when you can only see one step ahead. This week, I want to invite you to pay attention, not anxiously, not with a clipboard, but with the soft, open awareness of someone who knows they are being guided. Notice what repeats. Notice what resonates. Notice what makes you pause, and then follow it, one breadcrumb at a time. Now, if this episode resonated with you, and I have a feeling it might, come and share your synchronicity stories with me over on Instagram. I genuinely love hearing them. The more we talk about these experiences, the more we normalize the truth that we are always being guided. Always. And be sure to leave a review as it really supports my podcast, and be sure to follow so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and I will talk to you in the next episode.